Our first talk is on swift conservation in Hertfordshire, and Graham Knight needs no introduction really. He's on our bird club committee, and you'll see him every year, and you'll see him again today, talking to us about the birds that we've seen over the year. But Graham helps to moderate the records submitted to the bird club, as well as updating the articles published on the website and managing the new data page. He's organised species surveys for the bird club, has a particular interest in counting nests in rookeries, and in recent years has started helping to conserve swifts in Hertfordshire, as we are about to find out. Thank you very much. Please welcome Graham.
Thank you very much. So come to talk about swift conservation in Hertfordshire, which is something that's really taken off in the last few years. I think probably really since the COVID epidemic, when several of us got into it. And before I get going, a very quick short bit about my swift story. So I moved to Sawbridgeworth in the far east of Hertfordshire in 2021 and started watching swifts. Started realising I could count them and count their nests, which is a big thing of mine with whatever species, and got into it properly. Met some other swift groups in the area, I'll talk about them later, and really got into swift conservation in a big way. And hopefully today I can tell you a little bit about what all the swift groups in Hertfordshire are doing, talk about some of our survey work, do a little bit about some of the things about swifts you might not know, really busting a couple of myths about swifts. But the first thing a lot of people ask me when I talk about swifts is, why swifts? And really, for me, they're unique birds. So the fastest bird in level flight, 69.5 miles an hour. They only land when they nest. And when I tell people that swifts fly for 9 months at a time without landing, they don't believe me. The young birds might fly for 3 years from when they fledge to when they first land. And so they do everything else on the wing: eat, drink, sleep, and mate. And I've seen swifts mating on the wing once. It's a quite extraordinary thing to see. And the other thing I like is they're very urban birds. They live all around us. And perhaps most importantly, we can really help them. Swifts can be helped. I'll show you a little video of swift migration. So this is a pair of swifts. They're actually in Germany, and they were tagged. And their tag was retrieved the next year, and it shows the route they took. The pink is the female, the blue is the male. And what I find interesting is that they never meet, as far as I can see, so the whole time they're away. Thought they were coming back at one point, but they changed their minds. And I find it interesting that the female goes much further south than the male, goes all the way down to the bottom of South Africa. Probably about here now. The female gets back first, then the male. Now these are unusual swifts because they're nesting underneath a road bridge, which we don't have in Hertfordshire. In Britain, almost all swifts nest in buildings, and as far as we know, all of the swifts in Hertfordshire nest in buildings. Occasionally other parts of the country, in old pine forests or on rocky cliffs. We don't have a lot of either of those in Hertfordshire. We have quite a few road bridges, but none that we know of with swifts on. Here's the bad news. So swifts are in trouble, and this is the BTO graph, and you can see when you look down the left-hand side, the scale doesn't look good. We go from 100% in 1995 to less than 35% in 2023, I think it was. And that means for every 100 swifts there were back in 95, there are only perhaps 35 now, which is a big problem. Why is that? They're on the red list now. Why is that? Well, lots of potential reasons: loss of nest sites, extreme weather, insect decline. The more you talk to a swift conservationist and the more people look at swifts, the more I think that the swift conservationists will tell you it's all about loss of nest sites. Every species decline obviously is complicated. There's multi-factors at play. And a lot of people might think it's insect decline. Personally, I don't think it is. I haven't seen evidence, and that obviously is difficult to evidence, but I have seen a lot of evidence of loss of nest sites. So building repairs, upgrades, eco works on buildings to make them more airtight, etc. And particularly on local authority housing where whole streets can be done at once and nests lost. Extreme weather is certainly an issue as well, particularly in the breeding season. If you have a wet summer, swifts will really struggle. Good news, in 2025 we had a very good summer for swifts, and that was shown by various nest cameras which had lots of chicks in, so broods of 3 rather than what are often 2. Obviously it was a good summer. But here's an example. Can you spot the difference? So on the left is a Google Street View image of a building in St Albans. There's on the right is a photo I took early this year. There's the difference. There's the hole. And so in 2025, summer of 2025, I was doing a swift survey, and by complete chance the swift flew out of that hole. And there we are, that's a proved nest. Now, unfortunately, I went back in the autumn of 2025, some work had been done, and that's gone. And the swifts will not be going back in there because there's nowhere for them to go. I doubt anyone else would notice that. Didn't know there was a swift nest there, why would you notice that? And that happens everywhere. I see that several times a year at swift nest sites I visit. And the problem is they really struggle to find alternatives. So that's just one example. I could probably put 10 slides up like that where I've seen, here's last year's nest, someone's had their soffit replaced and the swifts won't come back. The good news is at this particular site there's a lot of swift boxes nearby, so hopefully they'll find somewhere else. They don't find it easy. Little myth about swifts. They're in decline, it's a bad thing, but I don't think it's as bad as people think. And one of the reasons for that, I'm frequently told there are less swifts this year than there are last. Every year I'm told that. And I say, when I first wrote this slide, I just wrote a big no on it because it's not really right. But I did put a bit more on there, obviously. So what you have to do, you must always compare the number of swifts at the time of the season you're at. There are always more swifts in July and the end of June than there are in May. So people remember the most swifts from the year before, and when it comes to May, there's only 6 swifts. I had 15 last year. They're in decline. That's because swifts arrive in waves. So the breeders arrive in May, some early, some late, and then there's second and third wave of swifts, and you can see the peak numbers are at the end of June and beginning of July. And that is not fledged birds, that is non-breeding birds. So the swifts don't breed till they're 3 or 4 years old, but they still arrive back in the country and fly around, cause mayhem, these young swifts sometimes. See a bit of that shortly. But it's non-breeders who are getting involved with the adults that are breeding. And this arrow shows when the young fledge. So you can see that it's not young. Young swifts don't start to fledge till the middle of July. That's just simply the timeline from when they arrive to when they start fledging, and they fledge through July and into early August. So that peak of numbers of birds is young ones, 1, 2 and 3-year-olds who are not yet breeding. And if I play this video, I'll try and put the sound on. Here's some young birds. This is a church in Stevenage, Bunyan Baptist Church in Basil's Road. This is, I think it was late June, and this is a whole lot of young swifts who are mucking around and learning about nesting. You've probably seen something like this. They go up to the nest but they don't go in. There we are, in and out they all go. Swifts are very odd birds, and I describe it like this. They don't learn to fly, they just launch themselves out of the nest and off they go, and they fly for 3 years, but they don't know how to land. They don't know how to find anywhere to nest, and what they do, they literally practice like this when they're 1, 2 and 3 years old, looking for holes. It's actually called banging. So they go and bang their heads and the shoulders of their wings to see if there's a hole in the eaves under a house. That's exactly what they were doing there, practicing. But it's very useful when they're 3 or 4 years old and they actually need to find somewhere and pair up. So, what kind of things do we do as swift conservationists? So I've listed a whole load of stuff here and I'll talk about most of it. Most importantly, I think, is finding swift nests, mapping where they are. Because you can't protect swifts if you don't know where they nest. And then you can protect the sites. We'll look at raising awareness. Obviously, we do various talks like this and others. Bricks and boxes, I've got some props, I'll talk about them later. Planning is a big thing, and finally we help swifts that are in trouble. How do you find a swift nest? I expect lots of you have thought, gosh, it's quite difficult, what they do is fly and they never seem to go in. So there are two main ways. The main way is it needs a lot of patience, standing around, and eventually you'll see swifts going in and out of a nest, but you've got to have an idea where it is. So finding nests by finding where the birds are screaming low at rooftop height, and eventually, particularly after 8 PM in the evening, the swifts will go in if they're not going in earlier. But again, it's in a blink of an eye. I was doing a swift survey with 4 other people. We were watching this one house, and it was 2 years ago in Watnut Stone in East Hertfordshire, and there were 5 pairs of eyes, and only 1 pair of eyes saw the swift go in. Because it was that quick. So it can be really time consuming. It's well worth doing, it's important to do because you can't find the nest without this method. But it's also sometimes viewed a bit dodgy standing around looking at people's eaves, looking in their windows, especially if you're on your own, lone male, looking in the windows of upstairs windows of a house, so it's not great. There is another way. So it's called call and response, and it's something I really started using in Sawbridgeworth in 2021, and I noticed screaming swifts go by a house and a bird called from its nest in response, and I thought, well, can I recreate this? So I downloaded a call on my phone. I'll get it out now because I've got it here. I don't think you can play on the laptop, and you play it and the birds respond to it. So I'm going to play it now. You might not be able to hear it. I'll explain why I turn it upside down in a minute. Should play. There we are. Pause it, and they do the same back. You need a mobile phone. You also ideally need an alarm clock because it works really well early in the morning, 5 till 7 AM nest. Sometimes 7 till 9, not very well during the day. Why is that? Because the swifts often aren't there during the day on their nest, but it works brilliantly early in the morning. It works really well in May, particularly. I don't quite know why that is yet. The swifts are very responsive. And what I literally do most mornings is get up at 4, go somewhere where I think there are swifts, get the phone out, play the calls, and they respond to me, and that's how you find nests. And you can find a lot of nests in a short period of time. My record is 29 nests in 1 4-hour slot. In Hemel Hempstead, early June last year. I did know where to look. It's always very helpful. You can't just do it randomly because needles and haystacks and all that, but if you know where to look, know where they might be, then you can find a lot of nests. That's the alternative, and it's really good for finding new places where you think there might be swifts but you're not sure. So we've been doing surveys really for 3 years, and this graph looks great. I'm afraid it's not an increase in swifts, but it's an increase in us finding them. So, as you can see, the more knowledge you have about where they are, the easier it is to go back the next year and confirm where the nests are. 2024, 801, 2025, over 1,081 swift nests in Hertfordshire. As far as we know, no one in recent times anywhere in Britain has done a survey of that many nests. And we hope we can do better. It's a struggle because it's an awful lot of work. This is a collaboration between several swift groups, and we used both of those survey methods, and we ended up with the 1,081 nests, as I said. 985 are those what we call natural sites. The swifts have found themselves in cracks under eaves of buildings or similar. 96 of them are in artificially provided swift boxes or bricks. That's 8.8%. What's certain is there are a lot more to find. I'll show you the map. This excellent map is thanks to Dean Cornish, who's here today. Thank you, Dean. Which shows where we found those nests, and we've got a table of the top places we found them. So 3 members of what I call the 100 Club. Hertford, top of the tree with 144 swift nests, Hitchin 118, Bishop Stortford a nice round 100. You can see the rest of the top 12, that is. You might well see is that there's a definite bias to the north and east of Hertfordshire. That is because that's where we're doing the survey work most. So, because the most active swift groups are there. While in Sawbridgeworth, Hertford's got a swift group, Ware's got a swift group, Hitchin's got a swift group. And so those are where we're doing all the work. There's the North and East Half Swift group as well, covering Bishop Stortford and some of the villages. So I've learned, and I'll come on to this in a minute, that basically there are far more nests than you ever think there are to find them. We would love more people to do swift survey work in the south and west. So if anyone wants to volunteer, something I'll mention later, we can help with how to do that and where to look. But there are a lot more nests. I think that if you look at that table on the right, the 100 Club will probably eventually include Stevenage, Welwyn, City, St Albans and Hemel. All of those towns I expect to have 100 plus nests. It's just having the time to find them. And when you think about the fact that Hemel and Stevenage, for example, and St Albans had, as far as I know, no evening surveys at all, which is where you find quite a lot of nests, then a lot have been missed. Most of them are call and response and random nests found at other times of day, but not in the evening. What does this mean for a population of swifts? Well, I looked at the VTO national estimate, which is 45,000 pairs in 2021. I think that's wrong. I think that's considerably lower than the real population. But one of the problems with the VTO estimate is it's based on survey work that doesn't really look for nests. It looks for changes over the years, and it produces that graph, which undoubtedly has truth to it because swifts are no doubt in decline. But I don't think the methods for estimating the nests are right, because if swifts are spread evenly around the UK population, and by that I mean because there's such a link between where the people live and where the swifts are, Hertfordshire should have 900 pairs of swifts. Well, we've got more than that we know about, and I think we found less than half of them. Look at that map and look at the survey work that hasn't been done in large areas, and even where it has been done, we haven't found them all. I think our estimate's 2,500 to 3,000 pairs of swifts. It's just a matter of finding them. So the most watched town in Hertfordshire, the swift town of Hertfordshire, is Hertford. It's a brilliant swift group. Clive and Helen spend so much time doing nest surveys and other work. That's how 144 nests have been found there. They haven't found them all. They think they've got maybe 90% of the nests. You can never find them all because swifts nest at the back of houses. You can't see a swift going in around the back of a house. You can't be everywhere. And these are some of the things I've learned really from swift nest surveys in the last 4 years. Got to record the address and the precise location accurately. We record a nest, and then one of my swift colleagues goes a couple of weeks later and actually finds a nest 2 metres along, same house. So actually there are 2 or there are 3 on that house. But you don't know that if you only visit once. There are always more nests than you think there are, and the more you look, the more nests you find. So hours in the field means more nests found. It's a short period. I wish the swift summer was longer, but we've got about 12 or 13 weeks to find most of them. I'm exhausted by the end of it. We've got to get up early every day, but it's well worth it. Quick look at my very own patch, Sawbridgeworth, 2025. This is a map produced by Swift Mapper, which is a brilliant website, an app that the RSPB have where you can record your swift sightings. If you want to put nests on there, screening parties on there, please do. I would love you to record the address that it's at, because if you don't, I don't include it on the survey. That 1081, every single address is identified. There are a handful without an address, they don't get included. I've got 35 nests in Sawbridgeworth. I think there's probably 40 to 45 actually, because I haven't found them all yet. You can see they're clustered. Bottom right, there's some even in Essex. I had a nosebleed when I went to get those. So there's actually 2 more in Shearing and a couple more in High Wyke. High Wyke's just off the map. But to demonstrate how precarious the population is, I counted up yesterday, 20 of these 35 nests are in just 5 buildings. So it's eminently possible, definitely possible, that if I'm not keeping an eye on those buildings, repairs are done on all those buildings in 1 or 2 years, then I could lose quite a number of the nests. I could lose over half the nests very quickly. I've been surveying Swifts for 4 years in Sawbridgeworth, and I've, as far as I can tell, lost no nests to any cause apart from repairs. I've lost 2 nests in that time. One, the house was repainted and some cracks were filled in above the windows, the Swifts got in. Another had soffits and fascias replaced, and the Swifts didn't come back. Lost no others for any other reason, as far as I can tell. Let's look at one other place, very special place in my part of the world, and that is Redwood Court, Bishop Stortford. We think this is the largest single building Swift colony in the southeast of England. And it wasn't even properly known as a Swift colony until 3 years ago when Gavin Vickery and I effectively discovered and started monitoring it. So the Swifts are unique here. It's a Victorian listed building. It's extraordinary triangular 3-sided shape. And as you can see, it's got these brick slots in pairs, and I think there are 166 slots around the building in total. And quite what the slots were meant for, we don't know, but the Swifts nested them. And the Swifts have been very successfully nesting probably for a long time in them. In the 3 years we've been watching, we've tried to record every entry or exit, and we think 70 of these slots have been entered during that, or exited during that time. How many nests that actually is, we can't quite tell. I think it might be slightly less than 70, but between 60 and 70 nests in one building. And I can't find anywhere remotely close to here with that many nests in a single building. Even the very famous Swift Tower at the Natural History Museum in Oxford, where Swifts nest in the tower of the museum, I think had 58 nests lost in 2025. So it's a very special place. And if you're ever in the area in the summer evening, I'd encourage you to go there and see screaming parties of perhaps 60 to 80 Swifts on a warm evening. Unfortunately, it's under threat. This demonstrates beautifully the problem that Swifts face. So we obviously got in touch with the people who are in charge of the building because we're concerned that something might happen. And this summer, we think they're going to scaffold and redecorate. And if they scaffold and redecorate, that could mean, if it all goes badly wrong, that all 60 nests, or however many it is, are blocked, which is going to cause a big problem. And Swifts won't relocate. They will try and get into the nests and injure themselves, potentially die, because they are so desperate to get back to their nest. So that's a big problem. We're in discussions with a company who manage the property. They're not particularly responsive. If they block it while the nests are active, they're committing an offence, and that can be stopped. If they block it before it starts, we're in real trouble because it's not illegal. Swift nets are not protected unless they're in use. So it's a real worry. So let's move on from that. Let's look at some of the things that Swift groups are doing. We've got 8 active Swift groups in Hertfordshire. We put up a lot of boxes and Swift bricks. 2,400 Swift boxes are now at least installed in the county. Vast majority of those have gone in the last 4 years or so. Boxes are installed in church towers. I'll come on to that. We occasionally, if we're very lucky, get to play with things like cherry pickers and put boxes up very high. And you can also retrofit Swift bricks, and that's my house. I couldn't resist having it done, so I've got 2 Swift bricks on my house. That's it, just put in a couple of years ago. Swift boxes. Let's get prop number 1. So this is a Model 30 Swift box. It's the Swift box of our choice. We have them made, some of them by men's sheds who, as you probably know, are not-for-profit organisations that allow retired men mainly to go and do things with wood, things like that, and we buy them from men's shed and then put them up. Others are made actually by Swift groups themselves, and these are ideal. They've got several key features. UPVC roof, which keeps it dry and prolongs the life, and it's white, keeps it cool as well. There's a nest mould inside. Swift boxes without nest moulds, the eggs roll away and don't hatch, because swifts don't know what to do with a leg that's rolled away. Sloping roof, very important, because otherwise predators will sit on top. I've seen jackdaws and magpies sitting on top of flat roof swift boxes, peering their heads in, and they will quite happily take an adult or a chick if they can reach it. Why do we do this? We put them up where people want swifts, so they're wanted. They're much less likely to have their nest blocked because it's obvious where it is. And this obviously mitigates the loss of nest sites as well. So the idea is that we have as many as possible in areas where swifts nest, and I hope they'll move in. And our figures suggest we're having more and more boxes occupied everywhere. 95 out of 2,500 doesn't sound many. It's going to go up quite a bit, I think, soon. And there's a target to aim for. So Suffolk has 500 occupied swift boxes. If we can reach that, we've got a much, much better chance of our population being protected a lot better than it is now. Because a lot of people with nesting swifts in natural nests don't know they've got them. The guy who we've got, and you'll see him on the next slide, who puts up the swift boxes, he's put up a lot of swift boxes for us, didn't know he had them on his own house. Because they can be incredibly discreet. Population's easy to monitor in boxes, and you know what? House sparrows love swift boxes. So, there's a lot more house sparrows in swift boxes than there are in swifts boxes in Hertfordshire. Hertford alone, with its many, many boxes, has at least 100 pairs of house sparrows. You won't find house sparrows using sparrow boxes, hardly at all, because they're just useless, I'm afraid, but they love these. Swift bricks are even better. I'll come on to them shortly. So, here's what we get up to. The guy up the ladder is Jake, and Jake is a big part of swift conservation in Hertfordshire. Does get paid to do it, but he puts up all of our boxes. He's put up, I think, something like 1,800 swift boxes. He's up the ladder. The one on the left was quite a challenge. That was a particularly high one. That's quite close to our colony in Bishop Stortford, and we did 4 boxes on a townhouse there. That's about the limit of his ladder. Certainly wouldn't catch me up there. I don't go beyond the second run. But we do a lot of this, and particularly now we want to target areas where there are swifts so we can get them in the box more easily. So that's Jake. You've got a box up, what do you do? So, this is Ray Hooper's box in Stevenage. Is Ray here today? No, I don't think so. Ray had a box up for a while, and you can see top right he added a caller, so a little speaker that plays the calls. And if you want swifts in a box, you greatly increase your chances by playing a swift call because it attracts them. They think there are swifts there already and they go and investigate. You want those 3-year-old birds that are looking for their first nest and doing what they were doing in the video earlier, accepting a swift box. And pretty much as soon as Ray turned the caller on, the swifts started investigating, and he's had swifts nesting for 2 years now in his box. So if you want a swift call, I can recommend one. You can play it best in the morning and the evening. Depends on your neighbours a bit. But I've got a call that's quite subtle and the neighbours don't really notice it. I don't actually put it on at 6 AM, though. I start it just after 7 and they're fine. So if you go away with one message today, if you've got a swift box, play calls from a speaker, and swifts are much more likely to find it. A case study of church towers. So, traditionally, swifts are often thought to nest in the belfry of churches. I don't think that's really correct, because when you go up in the belfry of churches, there's nothing but fresh air behind them. Well, I call it fresh air, it's not fresh at all, it's terribly musty, and etc. But it's a real opportunity for swifts, and so we've got all those churches in Hertfordshire that have had swift boxes fitted. They're all done by Gavin Vickery, who is here today. Thank you, Gavin. Makes bespoke boxes that fit in the behind the louvres of church towers. You can see one. The one on the left is Barley in North Hertfordshire before it was installed, and that you can see all the various chambers. I think there are something like 16 on that one. And on the right is Reed, also in North Hertfordshire. Different shape of box, 6 chambers. The top one has a swift nest in, and that was the first swift nest we had in a swift box in a church. Swift nests are quite distinctive. We'll see a bit more of that later when I show you some close-ups of a swift nest. What was going on in the other 5 boxes, we're not quite sure. There's a whole load of moss there. Our best guess, it was grape tits, but why they would fill up 5 boxes and not 1, we don't know. It's a bit of a mystery. And I think perhaps some more observations of Reed Church to see what's going in and out might be needed. But they wouldn't put off the swifts. They quite happily nest on top of other bird nests if they're in there. In fact, it does sometimes help them to find nests. House sparrows are a good thing in swift boxes because swifts go and have a look if they see other birds going in. And we're going to have a couple more installations soon. I think it's probably Standon and Ashwell churches are going to be next on the list to have boxes installed. Again, hopefully, really nice high buildings that swifts will want to nest in. Second case study, this is a really interesting one. So this is Hitchin. And this is an example of someone who loved their swifts but was having swift work done on their buildings. You can see on the left what it looked like originally. There were swifts nesting under those eaves close to the window. And that was changed to a gable end instead. And can you see there are 10 swift boxes, swift bricks actually built into the walls, that you can see them in the middle, into a timber framed building. And took a little while, but the swifts now love those swift bricks, and there are 7 nests between those 10. And of course, if this hadn't been a swift lover, there wouldn't have been any. That would have been the end of that colony. Great thing about this place, and I thank very much the person who sent me the pictures, is there are cameras. So I think this is probably the only swift boxes with cameras that I know about in Hertfordshire, with swifts in. And we've got a little peek into the lives of swifts in a swift box. So we could go through the timeline here. 3rd of May, I think she's got 3 or 4 cameras in out of the 7. This is nest 1. 3rd of May, here's one of the adult swifts. Just do the timeline, we'll fast forward. It's 2 or 3 weeks each time. 29th of May, nearly 4 weeks actually, and 3 eggs. So, and we fast forward again, and you can see we've got 3 chicks. One noticeably smaller than the other at the left-hand side. 14th of June, that is. Let's go again. They've grown up. 2nd of July. 3 large chicks. They've still got some of their downy feathers, so they're not ready to go yet. 17th of July, they're very ready to go. These are classic examples of swift chicks ready to fly. You can see their juveniles because of this extensive scaling on the head and a lot of white around the mouth. And they went soon after, because on the 20th of July there was only 1 left. I'll go back to the previous one actually. Can you see one of them looking out the hole? He's thinking about what to do, looking at the outside world. What on earth do I do here? And at some point, in those last 3 days, he or she launched themselves out, which is the most dangerous part of a young swift's life, seeing if they can fly for the first time when they have to do it for 3 years in a row. There was 1 left, and then that probably left soon after. Let's have a look at something different that we do, so planning. Planning is a big thing for swift conservation groups because of swift bricks. Let's get the swift bricks. Got a couple here, so this is a swift brick. Hole in there, swifts live in here. And you put this in a building and it will be there for 50 or 60 years. It's the best nest site you can have because it will last, frankly, longer than these. These are great, but they're not going to last 50 or 60 years. And built into the side of a new build. Got another one here. It's very similar. This is just for a rendered wall. And the swifts are going to be very safe in there for a long time, and the residents might not even notice. So we, as swift conservation groups, engage with all of the planning authorities in Hertfordshire, 10 of them. I spend more time on planning in relation to swifts than any other actions relating to swifts, because it's all year round. 200 or so planning applications a year are commented on asking for these. And we have some success. I think we've got, probably on the next slide, but I think we've got 3,500 swift bricks conditioned on new build houses or similar, which is great, but there's a rider to that. We also try and influence planning policy to make sure that if there's a policy there, then it's more likely you'll get actually than local authorities requiring them. We want Swift bricks, one per house, which has been a national campaign recently announced by the government. Not sure it's quite what it says it is in terms of being announced by the government. But St Albans were about to have a policy for Swifts on their local plan, and hopefully other areas as well. Come back to a couple of other things. And again, not just for Swifts. You can always tell when it's my photo in one of my presentations because it's bloody awful. The one on the left is a Swift brick in Brookman's Park with a house sparrow sticking its head out. I might have to tell that to you because you can't really tell it's a house sparrow, but I promise it is. House sparrows love Swift bricks as well as Swift boxes. Starlings will use them, and even house martins, which surprises a lot of people. That's not a photo taken in Hertfordshire, and that's in the southwest of England, where there are a lot of Swift bricks on Duchy of Cornwall developments in Devon, Dorset and Cornwall. And the house martins have moved in force there, and I think that's brilliant for house martins because they suffer even more than other birds. The nests are removed by people that don't like them. The nests fall down where it's too wet or too dry. The nests are predated by things like great spotted woodpeckers and taken over by house sparrows. The risk of all of that is much less when they're inside rather than in a mud cup on the outside. Planning enforcement. It's all very well having lots of Swift bricks required by planning permissions, but are they actually going in? We've got, as I said, 3,600 in Hertfordshire, and the answer is they aren't. So we go around and visit building sites. I've got a hard hat, I've got a yellow high-vis jacket, and we go and ask where their Swift bricks are, and more often than not, they're not there. So we've checked 805 Swift bricks that are meant to be there and found 383. And the simple reason for that is they're overlooked, they're forgotten, they're perhaps deliberately not put in, perhaps they don't know how to put them in. We don't really know the answer to that, but what we found is unless you actually go along and say, how about your Swift bricks, there's a good chance it just won't be there. Which, after all the work put in to get them conditioned and things like that, it is very, very frustrating. 3,000 Swift bricks sounds great, and I think we had over 1,000 conditioned last year, which sounds great, but 5,000 houses are built a year in Hertfordshire, so we've actually got a long way to go to get as many as we should have. This is the future, this is securing Swift populations properly. Final thing to talk about, something different, is our taxi service. So, unfortunately, Swifts end up on the ground sometimes, and if they're on the ground, they're in big trouble, and they need help if they're on the ground. So, we help with taking them to expert Swift rehabbers, and we're very, very lucky that we've got 3 in Hertfordshire, based in Hemel, Radlett and Buntingford. And I think dozens of Swifts, probably well over 60 or 70 Swifts in Hertfordshire last year were taken to rehabbers, most but not all of which were successfully released. House martins and swallows also need help, and we will transport those as well. Literally, it's a taxi service. There might be a phone call. I've found this bird, what is it? Once we've worked out what it is, we'll take it to where it needs to go or find someone that can. Final bit. What do you do with a Swift on the ground? Well, there's several things you don't do. You definitely don't leave it there. You definitely don't throw it in the air. Seen videos of people doing that, chucking it like that. Absolutely not. You don't try and launch it from an upstairs window, because the chances are flop to the ground and it'll injure itself more. And you don't try and feed it either, because you won't have the type of food it needs. I've seen people trying to feed seeds and all sorts of other things, and that, I'm afraid, is not going to help a Swift. But you do put it in a warm ventilated box with a lid and call an expert, and there's a Facebook group that specifically helps with this, that is on call to find someone to either transport it, or if you can transport it, rehab it. It's a Swift and Swallow SOS group on Facebook. How can you all help Swifts? Tell us about Swifts that are nesting. I expect somebody in this room knows about Swift's nest that I don't, and they're not included in our 1081. If you do, I'd love to hear from you. Come and see me at the break, even if you think I might know about it already, because I might not. And that would be brilliant to know. want to really get involved, you can help with survey work. If you live in the south or west of Hertfordshire, we love your help. I can't stand getting up and driving 45 minutes to Hemel to survey, but I'll do it if I have to. I'd much rather someone local did. Put up a Swift box or have a Swift brick fitted. Great. We need lots more than the 2,600 we've got. Become an ecological enforcer, and that means going to building sites like I do and say, hang on, where are your Swift bricks? And finally, volunteer to be a Swift taxi. Again, if you're available to drive, we're desperately in need of people that can drive to Hemel, Radlett or Buntingford. Finally, really up for it, and I'm not going to say it's not a bit of a commitment, but start a Swift group. We would love Swift groups in Hemel, Stevenage, Watford, places like that haven't got them. That's it, just some thanks from me to various people. My Swift colleagues, Gavin Vickery, who's my partner in crime in my area, Clive and Helen, who run the Hertford Swift group and do such amazing work putting up hundreds and hundreds of boxes, Jane from Ware, who does similar, Dean and Helen in Hitchin, who recorded that fabulous 118 Swift nest this year, and our rehammers, Claire, Michelle and Joe. If you want to know more, there's a Facebook group, Swifts in Hertfordshire, lots of content on there, and there'll be a lot more about it, about Swifts when the season starts, so join that group. There are contact details for all of the Swift groups on the Herts and Middlesex Trust website, and swiftmapper.org.uk is where you record your Swift sightings. I also thank all the photographers. I've got one last slide with an incredible photo of a Swift leaving its nest box in Hertford. Don't often see the feet of a Swift, except when it's going in or out, and there we are. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Graham. I'm just amazed at Swifts themselves, just that tracking them down through over the continents and seeing that they don't even think twice about tracking back across the continent, even though they're going the wrong direction.
I'll play it again.
Yeah, no, absolutely incredible. But just also the extraordinary practical help that this action is carrying out. I've probably got time for...
Oh, I've got the noise on. It's a German video, so it's a German commentary. No idea what it's saying.
Screaming. Has anyone got a question that they'd like to ask? Yeah, probably take one or two. Yes?
Where you find that the Swift bricks haven't been put in,
Yeah.
when you've had a condition that they should have been,
Yeah.
do you find that the planners are open to enforcing that?
It depends which area you're talking about. In East Herts, they're very open to it. Very Swift-friendly, East Herts Council, because the councillors are into Swifts. Other local authorities, less so. So a couple, St Albans, you might struggle, and Three Rivers, you might struggle, for example. There's a couple of suggestions where planning enforcement reports have got me nowhere so far. I'm waiting for one for 3 years now where nothing's been done. But there are retrofits or there are boxes put up. We've had quite a bit of success in some parts of the county with retrofitting going on.
Maybe just one more. Yes, go on then.
Yes, we've got a group in Whitwell and we're waiting for 20 Swift boxes to be made by Medsheds.
Yeah.
And then we're going to be putting them up. We've allocated
Yeah.
things. And it's the vocal noise that the recording that you say recommends.
Yeah. If you talk to me during the break,
Okay,
I
thank
can
you.
send it to you.
Yeah. Brilliant. Should we stop there?
We can.
Yes.
So
Sorry.
I could go on all.
You can go. I know you can. I think. Do you mind? Yeah. Go on then. One more.
Do Swift boxes have to be cleaned out? How would you clean out a brick?
No, they don't. And no, you can't.
That was. Do they have to be cleaned out? If you didn't quite hear it. Yeah.
No, because Swifts, to a large extent, clean them out themselves. You really want to know how? I'll tell you. They eat their own youngsters' poo. Many natural Swift nests are not clean for dozens of years. So no, you don't clean out Swift box. Sometimes house sparrows will fill it up to the brim with straw, hay, grass, whatever. Swifts will still go on top. If they really want it.
Excellent, thank you. Sorry to have to be the time police, but I think another round of applause, not just for a